We're now on page 44, exercise 2, which asks us to find the following sum using a number line diagram. A sum, remember, is the answer to an addition problem. It is what we get when we add two things together. So it's asking us to add negative 2.5 to 5 and show it on the number line. And I'm going to ask you to pause now while you do that. Okay. So negative 2.5 plus 5. I don't particularly like having to do this in between lines, but we're going to add negative 2.5. That looks like about negative 2.5. That's close, but what makes it exactly negative 2.5 is when I write negative 2.5. That's how we know it's exact. And then we're going to add 5. And I'm just going to do a quick little demonstration here. If I want an arrow that is 5, I can count 5 from this point. But just to demonstrate what it means to be adding 5, I'm going to do for a moment something that looks wrong, and it is just so that I can draw an arrow that is 5 units long because of the magic of the iPad. I can take this arrow that's 5 units long and put it where it should be, which is starting where my first arrow ended. So that tail, and that tail is this part right there, starts at negative 2.5. And then I've added 5. And you can see that it wasn't that exact, but knowing that I went negative 2.5 in that direction, 5 in this direction, I am 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that is 2 1/2. And I circle my answer. The fact that it's so hard to see exactly where that is on a number line can remind us of the utility of using the rule rather than using a number line to find sums and differences on a number line. And speaking of differences, the example number 2 is representing differences. And as a reminder, a difference is it's informally the answer to a subtraction problem. The amount of distance and direction between two numbers, but informally the answer to a subtraction problem. So I'm going to walk you through this one. It's asking us to find the following difference and represent it on a number line. So we're going to find it first, and then we're going to represent it. So it's asking us to do 1 minus 2 1/4. And let's just scroll all the way back up here for a moment. Let's take a look at that rule. And I'll write up here what were, it was asking us to find 1 minus 2 1/4. So which rule is it that fits 1 minus 2 1/4? It's a difference, so it's a subtraction problem. Subtracting a number is the same as adding its additive inverse or opposite. So we are going to add the additive inverse of 2 1/4. So we'll go back here. We've got 1 minus 2 1/4, and that rule tells us that this is equivalent to 1 plus negative 2 1/4. And then we're kind of stuck again. So we're trying to add numbers of opposite signs. What do we do now? 1 plus negative 2 1/4. Well, let's go back to the rules. We can add rational numbers with opposite signs by subtracting the absolute values and using the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value. And if I go back here, I've got the absolute value of 1 is equal to 1. The absolute value of negative 2 1/4 is equal to 2 1/4. So it's telling me that I can take 2 1/4, subtract 1, and whatever that is, I can use the sign for the greater absolute value. 2 1/4 is greater than 1, so I'm going to use the sign from 2 1/4, which is negative. So 2 1/4 minus 1, I can take 1 away from 2, and I know that's 1, and I'm still left with the quarter. So that is halfway, and then the answer to this is negative 1 1/4. The way I like to personally think about these, once I have 1 plus 2 and negative 2 1/4, is to actually break those down. I usually do it mentally, but I'm effectively saying 1 plus negative 1 plus negative 1 1/4. I'm breaking negative 2 1/4 down into negative 1 and negative 1 1/4. And you can see that putting those back together, negative 1 plus negative 1 1/4 will equal negative 2 1/4. And knowing what we know about opposites, we can say 1 plus negative 1 is going to equal 0. So I'm left with negative 1 1/4. Now follow the steps to represent the sum. So since this is a sum, I am going to follow the steps that I followed over the last couple of days, which is to represent 1 by starting at 0, draw a line to the right of length 1. Okay, and then since I am adding, I am putting together, I am going to continue from 1, which was where I ended here, step B. Draw a line to the left, because negative 2 1/4 is negative. I'm going to draw that with the length 2 1/4. Okay, and then I am going to all I can think of that's left is circle my answer. So again, I've got another number line with no numbers, and I'm trying to represent 2 1/4. Well, I'm trying to represent 1 minus 2 1/4. This one will get a little trickier if I'm trying to start at 0. I know I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 lines that I can use to represent. I'm going to be trying to represent something that's got quarters on it. So I'd really like to have quarters, but I'm moving in one direction and then the other because it's subtraction. But here I know that my answer is negative 1 1/4. So what will happen if I start out at, say, negative 1 1/2, and then I've got negative 1 1/4, negative 1, negative 3/4, negative 2/4, I could call it a half, negative 1/4, 0, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 1. Okay. I'm starting out at 0, drawing a line to the right to represent my 1. And there it is. It's length 1. I'm starting at 1. And then I'm going to draw a line of length 2 1/4. That's going to go to the left. And I can do this magically, but my arrowhead's going to have to be longer. And then I've got negative 2 1/4. Okay. So I've added 1. Well, I've started with 1, and I have added or subtracted 2 1/4. If we go back to our thinking about the number line, I've turned to the right, I've walked forward, and then subtracting. I'm still looking forward because it's a positive number, and I'm walking backwards. 1 step to here, 2 steps to here, and then 1/4 step. Okay. Exercise 3,